Welcome to the messy middle of entrepreneurship, unfiltered and unapologetic. Uncensored Entrepreneurs, hosted by Star Cod, Robert Wall, and Tina Torres-Wilson, brings you real stories from the trenches of building a business. Those late nights, hard lessons, big wins, and everything in between. This is where the truth about entrepreneurship lives. No fluff, no filters, just raw, honest conversations with founders who have lived it. So, if you're over the highlight reel and you're ready for the real deal, hit play. Most startups think that growth is all about funding, but scale isn't driven by funding alone. It's built through commercialization, institutional buy-in, and the ability to navigate rooms where real decisions are made. Today's guest, Pamela Cytron, has spent more than 30 years scaling financial technology companies. She's held senior leadership roles at firms like SunGard, DST, BlackRock, and Princeton Financial. Now she serves as the CEO of the Founders Arena WealthTech Accelerator, a first of its kind public-private initiative helping revenue-generating wealth tech startups move beyond pitch decks and into real institutional traction. Pamela understands what it takes to build in a highly regulated industry, how to turn innovative into adoption, and why resilience matters more than the hype. She's also a breast cancer survivor, board chair of the National Youth Recovery Foundation, a wife of nearly 30 years, and a mother of two, which means she absolutely understands leadership far beyond the boardroom. Pamela, welcome to Uncensored.
Welcome, and I thank you guys for having me today. I got to correct one thing. I am the former chairman of the National Youth Recovery Foundation, which was something that I built for a very long time. However, I'm expanding on that in a new stealth project that I have coming out of Stealth by Southwest next week.
All right, well, thank you for the correction. We never know as this information.
I like authenticity, and I'm making sure that I got the right information for you.
Thank you so much, Pamela, for letting us know. And so we are missing one of our co-hosts, Tina Torres, and we know that she will be back very soon. So Tina, we're sending you well wishes, and we're going to just head on right into our podcast today with Pamela. So Pamela, you are in financial tech. I want to hear all about how you got started. You've been there for 30 years. What drove you into that space, and why did you stay?
Well, that is an excellent question, and I would love to tell you it was totally designed, but it was not. I had a rather unusual childhood, and I was on my own quite early. And so by accident, got a job in a FinTech company. And by the way, FinTech wasn't a word then. Okay. It was just technology. And I'm reaching on a longer time. So I was still a teenager, and I got a job telemarketing in a financial technology company for a new product that they were launching. What came to be is that small little company that I was working for in Chicago ultimately became SunGard, which ultimately became FIS. So it was purely by accident. I was going to school at night. I was telemarketing during the day and didn't know a damn thing because I'd moved to Chicago from Wyoming. And so I show up in Chicago on the street looking for jobs, did some office work and things like that. And then there was an ad in the newspaper, and they were looking for someone that knew participant record keeping for 401k plans and all this tech stuff. And I was literally working in an office staffing receptionist. And so I had taken my resume and I had beefed it up. And I thought, well, this is human resources because I'm over here in this recruiting firm. And they brought me back, I think, 6 months. I mean, it was a much higher paying job. It was a much different profile. So I got called 6 months later after they had hired an executive to do the job, and it didn't work out. And so I started smiling and dialing. I say my superpower is sales. So while I have had the pleasure and been blessed to run major organizations, be part of growth, start my own companies, I think my success is attributable to those days that I was smiling and dialing and getting rejected every day. And I think I was so young that I didn't know any different, that this wasn't supposed to be the way you were. I had a tough childhood, so rejection was usual. And so I then took that skill and I went into sales. And then from there, I built my career. But what is fascinating about that is that I was in these companies that were really, really small then, because it was a long time ago, who became some of the biggest financial technology companies in the world. But I was employee 5. I was employee 10. My days at SS&C, which is now a $1 billion company, I was employee number 8. And we were only selling to insurance companies, back office accounting. Okay. They weren't selling around the world and have the best products in the world. Right. So I've been a scrappy startup person from the beginning. And so even though the companies I was with got bigger, I kind of go back to the scrappy.
It's very fascinating, like you said, that back then, I mean, obviously technology has changed a great deal, but that you were instrumental in some of those earlier times. I was in the financial sector as well, way back when, before social media was even what it is today. And it's interesting to see how much has changed over that time. One of the things I did want to just address and to not look over is, Pamela, you talked a great deal about this is all you knew and you were used to rejection. So you just dove in and gave it all. We talk a great deal on this show about mindset, and that most people, we sit there and we allow limiting beliefs and other type of imposter syndromes to come in, and it prevents us from really accelerating. In sales today, you get the new people that come in, and I know that you've experienced this, where 20 or 30 no's or rejections and they quit, right? Because they just can't handle the no's. I love that you brought that up because you didn't know better. You jumped in. And so can you share with us just a little bit about that pivotal moment where you went from sales and you bridged the gap into leadership, where you were actually starting to maybe train or help others do the same thing?
Fun fact, just a sidebar story. Everybody was having a 21st birthday party for me, and I was actually not 21 yet because I had fibbed about my age a little bit to get the job.
I still do that once in a while.
There's this big 21st birthday party, and I can't get in the bar. I was like, oops. Anyway, I believe very differently. I tell people I am a good leader. Although I've managed a lot of people, I think I'm a much better leader than I am a manager. And one of the things that I think has enabled the success of, I think, every startup, every company, I do believe needs to be led with sales mentality, not operational mentality. And I think we could sit here on another podcast and talk about the different companies that are run that way. I could do it in FinTech. We can do it in any industry. So one of the things that I've done to this day, no matter what role I had, is carry a bag. Because how can you enable people to sell if you're just managing them? One of the things that I've done, I journal. We all had different hobbies that we do. So I believe from when I started back in the late 80s, early 90s to now, I have lived through, or anybody my age has lived through, 6 transformational sales cycles. And I believe we're in the 7th. And I have documented this in terms of time, different things, right? And all along the way, there certainly has been a technology emphasis in that transition, but it's been more about regulations changing and the buying patterns changing. Okay. When I was in my 20s, I was doing 20, 30 enterprise deals a year, $1 million deals a year to banks. When I tell people that, they think I'm like a grandma. They're like, oh, that can't be. And then moved into the cycles where our reporting and our SOC and the procurement of places, right? So I say that before I answer your question is because I'm calling this sales cycle the 7 sales sense. And what I firmly believe, we'll come back to that. But I think what I did by always being a doer and not a manager as a leader, I think that has contributed to it. Now, being a bad manager isn't always great either. Okay. You keep people along. It's like, you know what? He's not really doing a good job, but I'll just leave and I'll just do his job for him because I don't want to deal with that conflict. And that can be detrimental in a small company sometimes. Better leadership than management skills probably do that, right? So I don't think that's unique. I think by leading teams with the evidence and the fact that you're in it with them makes all the difference in the world. I also think that being I'm not good at firing people or getting rid of them. I am good at telling them when they're not doing their job. So, and maybe a little too bluntly sometimes, but there's been many times where it's not the right role. And so I think the intuitiveness of understanding how you make, because in particularly in the world that we're coming in this 7 sales sense, the behavioral aspects of the human are going to be far more valuable than whatever skill they think they're coming with. And what that is, because you can teach skills. You can't teach behavioral. And if we don't come through with our absolute most authentic self, even if that's things people don't like about you, we have to become more authentic than ever because we're selling something that's so unauthentic. So I really believe that that's this shift. But it's being transparent to people. It's being able to tell people this job isn't for you. But it's also being willing to take time and invest in the people that have the right attitude, that have the right, to your point earlier, big on mindset. Because if you've got those capabilities and you're humble, you can make some really good people in your organization. And that's the best way to build.
Absolutely. Pamela, tell us a little bit about some of those defining moments that helped shape your philosophy around leadership and scaling within these larger organizations.
I think that comes back to my starting my career so young with no real experience and no real role models in my life. I got fired a lot too, just so you know.
That's called growth.
I joke with you, I just started my own company because I got fired from too many. But anyway, I'm half kidding with that. Defining moments were, Star, you might understand those a little bit more. I had issues relative to being one of the lonely females in a big man's world. And it really didn't bother me. And I really didn't see certain things. But I caught myself sometimes ignoring things that many other women thought were important, if that makes sense. And at that time, it was very different than the time is now. But I use those as an opportunity to not use being a woman in a male dominant area as a crutch. I used it as a tool. And I feel very strongly that being a lady and how you dress, I never tried to be the man. I cultivated those things because the things that are strength in women, just naturally, those are all very attributable to a Wall Street world, to those things, right? But it's how we use them. And I've been a big advocate around you use it, you don't abuse it. And everybody trying to be something that they're not. So my defining moments, I think, took an eye of putting my eye somewhere else, that I felt that if I had spoken up at different points of my career, it may have stalled my career. But I didn't use it in a victimization way. I turned it into a tool, always maintaining being a lady and using the lady as a strength. And that you can tell I'm already outspoken and I'm all of these things. So that was one defining moment. Another defining moment was I had the pleasure and the ability in my life to get recruited quite heavily by BlackRock before BlackRock was what BlackRock was today.
Buying up everybody.
They were a fixed income manager. They were on the road to growth, but they had a technology product, which now the world knows about, called Aladdin. And they wanted to bring that to market, sell it like technology. But they were a traditional buy-side asset management firm, and they wanted a vendor. And I'm a vendor. I was always a vendor. And they were interviewing me and doing all this stuff, and it was really lush. And even though they weren't as big as they are today, it was still a completely transitional place than being in an early stage financial services technology company. But they were, with this product, an early stage financial technology company, and I was the right match for them. Or so they thought. My friends were like, what are you doing? Why are you even thinking about this? Why are you even questioning taking this job? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I fit. I'm a little scrappy for them. Anyway, the long story bearable, I went there. We got a land launch. It was wonderful, but I was such a fish out of water. I like the scrappiness. I like big things and money, and I mean, those are all good things. But we defined it collectively as tissue rejection. What was the name we gave it? But it was a defining moment because had I not made the decision to leave, and they're like, where are you going? Do you have a job? I left. I was pregnant, like really pregnant. I said, you've been treating me so well. You've paid me a lot of money. Why would I look for a job on your dime? They're like, well, you're pregnant. What are you going to do? I'm like, don't worry about it. But it was a blessing. Now, my husband will cry every time he sees a BlackRock commercial because had I stayed, the path may have been different. We might not have had a couple of failures and success, but have been a more status quo life, I think. But what I learned was where my place belonged. I learned that it was the traits that I had of the genuinity, the scrappiness, and really liking the fight of the difficult part that was somewhat defining. But I knew that companies like that weren't going to change the world in a technology aspect. Not in the world. They totally changed the world. But back in those days, you had a lot of BlackRocks thinking they had the best tech in the world and were trying to spin it off and sell it or monetize it, right? And whether it was healthcare, whether it was finance, we learned that that was a bad strategy. because at the end of the day, their day was better. And that showed opportunity for entrepreneurial growth. And FinTech started and things started, right? So it was a really defining moment because I could have had a totally different course. And even when I look back on it, but the experience that I learned there was very eye-opening to how I would sell to more BlackRocks the rest of my life.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so powerful because when you're talking about this as a timeline, so much has happened in the sector, as you stated before, not just new products, but probably the most rapid pace I've ever seen where new startups continue to surface. Now, obviously, a lot of those are only a few of them make it, right? There's a lot of acquisitions that happen time and time again. And you've seen that, right? You've lived through a lot of these mergers. I do want to talk just a bit about, because of your background, commercialization over hype. So why do so many founders confuse fundraising in their business over growth?
I don't know if I know why many of them do it, but I scream this from the rooftops. As your early founder, as you're early going out, if you focus as much time in the rooms with your buyers as you did in the rooms with the venture capitalists, only to be able to hear, well, go get some clients and come back and I'll do this, right? And things like that.
I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Before we dive back in, I want to share something I've seen again and again. When business feels stuck, it's not always strategy. It's often misalignment. That's what inspired me to create the Universal Brand Alignment Method. It's a course that helps entrepreneurs reconnect with who they truly are and how they're meant to lead so that their message finally lands. So if you're ready for your brand to reflect your truth, then head to brandingcollaborative.com/alignment. That's brandingcollaborative.com/alignment. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
And they don't realize it's the power, but they think they need the money. But what they don't realize is that the best teams that you will put together, if they don't understand the personal sacrifice to getting it off the ground, then you don't have the right team. So if everyone's focused on when's that first paycheck coming, and I'm not saying pay's wrong, don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But the thing is, in the companies that I've started, in one case, my first customer was Northern Trust, and the next one, it was Bank of America. Those are big companies to get in the door with. But that brand, that sale takes care of the rest. And so your team has to be aligned and understand really what being a startup is. And I think that this is where we're going to be in a lot of trouble, guys. And I think you're going to have a lot of conversations on your podcast about this because everybody thinks they can be it. And the new word of solo entrepreneurship. Let me tell you something. Entrepreneurship is not a solo job. No one can be a solo entrepreneur because, first of all, people that like to be by themselves are really not outward people anyway. And they're really probably not going to be able to sell shit or stuff.
No, you're right.
We talk about this a lot, Pamela. People, they're afraid to relinquish what they're working on and start delegating and outsourcing. And there's no way you're going to scale without having staff and a team. So that is so true. I love that you said that. And the solopreneur is only going to go so far.
I've done friends and family before, and I don't have a lot of family. Friends and family is a term, but I have met many founders. When your own family and friends won't fund you, that also could be a thing, even if it's $10 where they're coming before you. But the thing is, every founder, in my opinion, should not say, I've got my idea, I've got my MVP, and now I'm going to go talk to VC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because if you don't talk to client prospect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, how do you know if your MVP is any good? And particularly in finance, you get these guys or girls that have worked there, and more so guys than girls in this case, not playing to star here, but they've done this function their whole life. And so they think they can leave the bank. And then they're like, I'm doing the function. I'm automating the function I did my whole life because it's never been automated. But that was the only function they did their whole life. Okay. So they didn't realize that there's 100 functions going on around them. And it's not that one function that needs to be solved. It's the workflow across all of them. And so I first look, is this a feature or a function? Or is it a product? A feature and a function will never be a product. Sometimes I think it's fear. But here's the thing. I set up a meeting and say, hey, bank 1, bank 2, bank 3. I got this great entrepreneur. I think he's onto something great. I need your feedback. You humbly go in and you say to them, listen, I built this. If you can't find stakeholders that are going to let you come in and poke the holes in your stuff before you get in front of a venture capitalist who's going to poke a bunch of holes so you don't have any prospects, it's just broken, is my opinion. And Listen, being an entrepreneur is hardship. It's a lonely place to be. You have to get your mindset in check. You got to get your mental health in check. You got to do all these things. I say that we have to train entrepreneurs like we train athletes. It's the same stamina. It's the same thing. If you were on the NFL or you're playing a major sport, you would do your training and you'd be doing your training all the way to get up there. So I think that we're in big trouble because AI is enabling everybody to think they can be a company builder.
Oh, I'm so glad you said it.
So I believe the process that I put in, and I think you'll see more programs like what we've built at the Founders Arena, which we haven't talked much about. But I think you're going to find different levels of community. I really believe that it's going to change how accelerators work, how studios work, how meetups work. But here's going to be the biggest challenge. It's not going to be the entrepreneurs creating ideas. It's going to be, let's use financial services because we're all familiar with it. How, for goodness sake, are they going to be able to take the meetings? Where are they going to be? And then all of a sudden it's going to be like, well, I saw this today, but I just heard somebody else talking about it. So are they going to say, well, wait a minute, is this AI far enough along for me? Or is something else coming? Is this really there? So I think that the paralysis that could be in front of us across every industry, we should be put up warning signs. If we don't do that as a community of people who are committed to entrepreneurship, who are committed to helping. I mean, listen, my whole thing with the Founders Arena is I have a chance to give back. I've had a fabulous career and I'm done now because I got a company out of stealth that I will promote at the end. But it is a pun between me and other people like me to take some part of our life and create something to give back. Because what I'm telling you is in this 7 sales sense, you're going to need the sales skills that I had when I was 17 years old. You need to get in a room. You need to sit in the lobby. You need to knock on a door because people are only going to buy trust.
We talk about this all the time. It's so refreshing to hear you say it. Star and I, we come from an evolution of brick and mortar business, and then it migrated online. And everything you're saying, we constantly say it's almost just going back to the basics, almost every single step of that ecosystem. And so, by the way, you've mentioned it a couple times. And for the sake of time, I do not want to overlook the Founders Arena. So what gap did you see in accelerating this whole ecosystem that led you to actually create the Founders Arena? You want to talk about that a little more in depth?
I will. And I will tell you, I watched something similar happen in Arkansas and brought in the team that did that to help. But the whole notion is, I love it when we do a contest. How do you take 6 fintechs who do 6 different things and say, who's going to win? I have won every innovation contest I've ever pitched in. And not because my product was the best, because I just outpitched everybody else. That's it. Showmen win trophies in pitch contests. But how do you do a pitch contest when there's 6 different products doing 6 different things? How do you put the people in the room? So going back to my big belief that sales is the center of the universe, you got to put buyers and sellers in the room. And not everybody's as scrappy. And we certainly have learned in the last few years, people have gotten a lot less scrappy about sales. Like, oh my God. So it was, how do you take the buyers and the sellers, get them in the room and be able to do that? And I think that this is going to be a very important thing going forward. And we're going to have to look at the sector in the sector. So our first program started with WealthTech, which is a sector in the sector of FinTech, because FinTech has become catch-all. FinTech was originally payments, guys. That's what it was. And now it's all this. So we did WealthTech. And the whole thing was, if you put product makers and product buyers in the room together, things happen. But by us being in the gateway, basically, they get in front of major companies, a UBS, a Fidelity, things that would take them a long time to get. So during the program, you get in front of 10s of 20s of buyers. We get the back end feedback. We coach them better for the next thing. We know it's not for this, but we know it's for an advisor. We know it's not for a Fidelity, but we know it's for an IRA. And we really have the ability to point them at things. And so I would be remiss in not saying we've been at it for 2.5 years. We have brought 30 companies from 7 continents through the program because I'd like bringing international companies. And in those 2.5 years, we've had 5 exits.
Very good.
These were not IPO, okay? Because there's not a lot of IPOs. People think, oh my gosh, this unicorn. I do not believe in pixie dust and unicorn, okay? I spread my pixie dust around. So there's no curriculum. We're not telling them how to rewrite their business plan. We invite investors to the program, but we are not redefining that founder for a venture capital person. We are working on their sales pitches. We are working on what they need to do. Sometimes they still got marbles in their mouth. And throughout the program, they are set up with one-on-one meetings with the best firms in the world that want to look at technology. The impetus around it was, there's a period of my life that I think that we should all be giving back to the industries that have treated us well. So if I have the ability, I am a connector. That's what I'm known for a bit. And most of those people are still working, although they will be retiring, right? So how do we teach these things that we've learned that I think are going to be as critical from our years and years of what we did 20 years ago, 30 years ago to build our businesses? That, I believe, is the only way you're going to build an AI company. And so my role is helping do that, not only in our sector, but I've done it on a broader role in the DFW community.
That is amazing, Pamela. So when you're looking at working with these companies, what are you looking for in them in order to take them on as a client and get them in front of these buyers?
So we do an open enrollment. We take 6 companies twice a year, and they go through an application process. The minimum thing they have to have is at least one client in production. So I have to know someone. They were able to sell someone something. Someone believed it was good enough. So not MVPs, not I'm making my money on consulting. Think of us as a growth program. So the average company that comes into our program is probably doing between 2.5 and 5 million of revenue. They've probably got 5 million of seed. We've had larger. I've had a publicly traded company come in, believe it or not. We have had, our international companies tend to be bigger. And I believe that what we're doing, and I believe that people should look at this in their own sectors from an international perspective. I think those are the best. And let me tell you why. Because they've gotten growth. They're in their market, right? Everyone always wants to come to the US, but they've got the traction. So they're doing 10 million in Europe. They're doing this, and they're smart enough to come and say, okay. So in those cases, we're getting them in front of them. And for them then to go home and say, okay, we got to tweak that. We got that. This message works in the US. And I've got 2 of them now. They've got a country manager. They're scaling properly for the growth in the US. They're not all international, but I do love international companies. I do believe that any sector that we're doing business in, we should create that kind of funnel for international companies.
Wow. With all that's going on, where are some first resources that people can tap into when they want to learn more about you, your movement, and everything that's going on?
Okay, so I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. That is a place. What do not do to me, and I would tell you, because I think it's been the worst invention on the planet, is Calendly. I believe it took the art out of sales. You guys answer this for me. In your earlier days of selling, what did we learn by scheduling a meeting? They might be on vacation. They might be at their son's soccer game. They have an assistant. We lost. And so what we've lost now is this thing that has nothing to do with what we're buying and selling. We're actually learning to trust each other while we make appointments, and now we've lost that.
The art of connection in relationships and other things. Yes.
So LinkedIn, I reply, as people know, even that have cold called me, for the most part. Try to answer everything that comes my way because you never knew. And when I was 17 and doing it and people were not taking my calls, my family goes crazy. I talk to the telemarketer on the phone, like, what are you doing? I'm like, I tell them, don't call me at dinner time. That's probably pretty rude. And this was the wrong sales pitch. So I always give a little coaching along the way, but I believe everybody believes to have their call answered. So either reach out to me, but I can't help everyone. So please come with purpose. But if you're a young kid and you've got an idea, I do a lot of work with the high school kids here in Texas. And I just think that these kids, they all think they can be entrepreneurs. So I think we need to start putting some of our energy into secondary education and putting programs in there, because what they're learning in school is not preparing them for the future of life.
That is so true. You mentioned earlier, and probably was before we even went live, that you're currently in both New York and Texas. Is there any relationship to what's happening in the sector, the business, or do you just really like those 2 areas?
No, I've sat on a board down in Texas for a while. You've just watched it grow and grow and grow. And then all the noise with the stock exchange that we've heard, which is now here, the Texas Stock Exchange, right, which is the first new exchange in a long time. I don't know how closely you guys remember Charlotte, but you had Charlotte and then the workforce came with the banks.
I'm right here. I'm an hour south of Charlotte.
So you saw it, right? The workforce came and then the banks came. Well, then what happens is you've got workforce, you've got people, and then those people leave those places and they start companies. So I think the railing on for financial services technology in Texas is about 3 to 5 years from the biggest explosion we've seen probably anywhere, even outside of New York, on the workforce. And I think that with the stock exchange coming here, it's going to provide the ability to look at different ways of liquidity for startups. I think they're going to be really mindful to how we can change things because they're starting it from scratch. And believe it or not, it's very siloed down here. There's not a lot of venture capital down here. There's a lot of capital. There's a lot of studios. Not a big fan of studios myself, by the way.
I told you I was just down in Dallas launching another new studio. So when you said that,
I mean, I don't know how well you followed it, right? It's Goldman's second largest office. Now JP Morgan's. You've got Scotiabank. UBS just opened. You got Cap. I mean, you go here and it is flooded. But financial services will be the shift. Fort Worth is building all their Hollywood studios. You got Landman and all these things going and Universal Studios coming. But it wasn't just out of the box. I've watched what was going down here. I got up and pitched to a bunch of Texans coming from New York. And so the Founders Arena is a public-private organization. So I was able to get community funding from the city of Arlington, Texas, which sits smack dab in the middle of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I call it Dallas-Fort Worth Arlington, which is what it should be called. But we got engaged with the community. So that enabled us to also accelerate some of this community connection that I also believe is going to be incredibly important to chamber. I think you're going to see chambers change. I think you're going to see communities change because we all have to align together or people will stop building. They will keep building, but no one's going to be buying anything because they're not going to know what to buy.
wow, I think that's fascinating. I mean, ahead of the curve, right? It's so true. We could sit here and talk forever. You even mentioned earlier, that's for another show, because I think we're going to have a lot to talk to you about in the coming years. What are some last things that you would just like to leave our audience with? I mean, obviously, you've done a great deal of work, a very high paced work where I know that in today's world, whether you're a mother or a father, we're constantly trying to figure out how to balance work and life and everything that's going on. Do you have any other words of advice?
So I will tell you this, most of what we've talked about is sales and the entrepreneurial spirit. When I talk to founders, you have to understand, I am a mom. My children are grown now. But if you talk to either one of them, had them on the show, I mean, they live through an entrepreneurial life. And that's a hard life sometimes because it's not all that. So be transparent, make sure you have the support. But when you're doing that, and particularly to the female founders, you're still the CEO of your family, no matter how you slice it. So I do think you got to focus on well-being. I mean, throughout my whole journey, okay, I've had cancer twice. I have been sober for 17 years next month. But these things all went through it. And life is going to send you curveballs. And what you've got to do, the most important thing in the world is be transparent, communicate. And that what kills companies is the same thing that kills families. You don't communicate and you're not transparent with them. And to be a startup founder and to grow a startup company, you must be as transparent as glass with that team. So you're never going to show up and the door's going to be locked. And don't think that it's just rainbows and pixie dust. It's hard work. And if you are not a sales leader, every business needs a sales leader on their team.
So powerful. Thank you so much, Pamela, for all of your words of wisdom. And we're excited to see what's to come with your business. So maybe we'll have you back on the show. And if anyone is interested in connecting with Pamela, you can find her on LinkedIn, as she's mentioned. And Pamela, was there anything else that you wanted to promote on our show today? I thought you said there was something you would promote at the end.
I'm coming out of stealth to support my journey of financial services in life. I've been building the plan for a number of years, but it took twists and turns. And so I am blending my wellness and my journey of staying healthy with my background of financial services and launching a wellness operating system. Because I think if we found anything, that wellness has become the greatest market where everybody's doing it, but there's not a lot of authenticity in that market. So one of the things that we have in financial services that we've been able to do, right? Regulatory compliance, all of these things. And I'm not talking prescriptions, I'm talking the wellness market. And so using all of the things that I've learned from being on Wall Street, I've built a FinTech platform to be able to build a wellness operating system that we'll be launching called Truva.
Oh, fantastic. So there will be links and advertising soon on your platforms, correct?
Yeah.
Or do we get to see it first?
You'll get to see it first. I'm a stealthy person, right? It's a little bit at a time.
I love it. And by the way, for those that are listening or even later catching a portion of this, as we syndicate across all platforms. Please look in the comments. We'll have plenty of links and resources and ways that people can connect directly to you, Pamela. We thank you so much for your time today.
Well, I am honored to be participating today. Thank you guys. And thank you for keeping all the energy out there. Disruption is a hard thing, so thanks for keeping it honest.
Thanks, Pamela.
Until next time, we'll see you on another episode of Uncensored Entrepreneurs. Thanks for listening to the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. If you're getting value from the show, take a minute to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you tune in. It helps more bold entrepreneurs find us. Until next time, keep showing up, uncensored and unapologetic, and we'll catch you on the next episode.